whose life is going to bring tears into your eyes. As I promised to, Mbuyisa Makhubo. Mbuyisa Makhubo. Mbuyisa is spelled Mbuyisa. Mbuyisa, Mbuyisa, Mbuyisa Makhubo, Mbuyisa Makhubo. Mbuyisa is spelled Mbuyisa. Makhubo is Makhubo, Makhubo. Mbuyisa Makhubo. Mbuyisa is spelled Mbuyisa. Makhubo is Makhubo. And I see so many people right here in the African history class. I want to say thank you so much for joining us. Now you can see the photographer on the board. You will see the photographer of a young man holding a little child in his hands. And you will see that the child, my brother, my sister, is almost limbless. In other words, is gone very limber. And you can see a young girl standing or walking by them, screaming and shouting. My brother, my sister, this photograph was taken on the 16th of June, 1976. I was only 2 years old. This photograph was taken during the Soweto uprising, when the South African white apartheid police opened fire on school children who were demonstrating on the streets of Soweto against the forcible introduction of Afrikaans and English as the main instruction languages for education in South Africa. In other words, they were forced to study Afrikaans. They refused to let them study their own language, the Zulu. They forced Afrikaans on them. And Afrikaans is a Germanic language. In fact, an Eastern Germanic language. Yes. And the apartheid government was forcing it on the people. They decided to go out and demonstrate. And whilst they were demonstrating, about 50 South African police approached the demonstrators. And when the school children saw them, they were frightened and started to run away. In no time, armored cars arrived, and so many tens of police decided to open fire on the little children, killing 2 of them on the spot. One of them is the one you see in the hands of our hero for today. He was called Hector Peterson. Remember, we talked about Hector Peterson a few days ago. And I promised you that I was going to be talking about this other man in whose hands you see Hector Peterson. He was called Mbuyisa Makhubo. Mbuyisa Makhubo was born circa 1957 or 1958. And he was a regular Sowetan. In other words, he was born in Soweto and he lived in Soweto and was with the people of Soweto. My brother, my sister, see what happened now. Now, on the day of the demonstration, as a youth in Soweto, my brother, my sister, the 16th day of June, 1976, he was on the streets when he saw that the police had opened fire. And he saw that one of the children had fallen down. And he decided to pick him up and rush him to the hospital. In fact, as he picked up the little schoolboy, he didn't know that there were cameras even around him. Not knowing that another photographer by name Sam Nzema, my brother, my sister, Sam Nzima had taken a photograph. In fact, even with this photograph, he struggled for several years to be able to get the copyright to that. He took 2 photographs. There is another photograph. In fact, and these photographs became a symbol of the struggle in South Africa. I'm talking about apartheid. This little boy that you see in his hands died when they arrived in the hospital. In fact, in the car of the journalist and photographer, Sam Nzima. My brother, my sister, when these photographs came up later, the young man was harassed so much by the white South African police. And here you can see another photograph. And in this photograph, you will see him trying to put the child in the car. All this while, the child was gone. Hector Peterson. What a sad story. He was only 12 years old. And our hero for today, my brother, my sister, he was old enough to know the danger. He carried a little boy into the car. The little car that you see. It belonged to the photographer, who was also a journalist. They drove to the nearby hospital, and upon arrival, he was pronounced dead. Now our hero for today, Mbuyisa Makhubo, continued to struggle in South Africa as he was being tormented by the South African police. To tell them what he knew, he was harassed and beaten on the streets. He decided to run away to Nigeria. As many other South Africans, many people would never know that Nigeria actually opened its doors to South African refugees. Ghana also did. And a lot of South African refugees arrived in Nigeria. In fact, they were given free accommodation and free food in the late 70s. Our hero for today, Mbuyisa Makhubo, left South Africa 2 years after the Soweto uprising because of harassment and death threats. He arrived in Lagos, Nigeria, where the government of Nigeria offered him accommodation and feeding and took him in as a refugee, as many other tens of thousands of South Africans. My brother, my sister, today when I hear South Africans beating up and killing Nigerians, today when I hear South Africans xenophobically, my brother, my sister, beating and killing Africans, all because they say they are coming to take their food. I remember when Nigeria opened its doors. I remember when Nigeria paid to educate South Africans in Nigeria for free. Free education. How Nigeria even donated money for struggle. Not even Nigeria. Ghana did it too. Zimbabwe did it. My brother, my sister, he arrived in Nigeria and he stayed in Nigeria. The last time his mother heard about him, my brother, my sister, was in 1978 when he had arrived in Nigeria. And he told his mother that he was living right there in Nigeria. The mother by name Mbuyisa Makhubo. Mbuyisa Makhubo said at the reconciliation committee sitting that her son had been forced to leave South Africa since 1978 and never returned. He stayed there, and up till now, nobody knows his whereabouts. Somewhere in 2004, we were told that he was still alive, but the DNA test did not match. Unfortunately, in the same year, 2004, his mother died, Mbuyisa Makhubo. Today, we remember this great black hero. He was bold to carry a dying 12-year-old when the bullets were still flying over his head. He was bold to carry a dying 12-year-old all the way to a hospital. But when he saw this little boy die in front of him, in fact, he became disheveled and traumatized. He never became a man again. Today we remember you. Oh, Mbuyisa Makhubo. Mbuyisa Makhubo. We remember you, my brother. We remember your selflessness. You could have run away from the bullets. But when you saw the 12-year-old go down and blood oozing from his mouth, you carried him, as we see you, into a waiting car, straight to the hospital. You were so disheveled. You even cried whilst you carried the little boy. You sang, Asimbonanga, Asimbonanga, Asimbonanga fumandelato, Asimbonauna. You cried and you sang. You cried as you carried the little boy. He did not survive. My brother, my sister, today we remember the atrocities. We remember the killing. We remember the murder. We remember what our children went through. We remember what we ourselves went through. We remember the pain. We remember the killing. We remember how many of us went down. We remember how for no reason, yes, no fault of ours, we were gunned down on the streets of Soweto. Today we continue to sing, Asimbona, Asimbonanga, Asimbona, Asimbonanga, 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 Asimbona. In the burden of knowledge, I ask you, now that you know the story, now that you know how many people went down for no fault of theirs, now that you know that even 12-year-olds went down the drain, now that you know, what would you do? Bianeni ole, mini obafe, yezunda kagani, mezaka yini, yan pabango, bukaya nang, fifia yenya, nukai na wo, banayon, ebe den, banayon, ebe yabade, lele anjima singa be konne. It's been the African History class.